Introduction. Quick wear, 1v1, double cleanliness, he, full sweet pet, paranoid love brain male lead+Ke Tian Ke Yu female lead, love at first sight, two-way journey. The fox spirit fox was leisurely sleeping in the foxhole when suddenly she was told by a binding called the system that if she was willing to go with it to 3,000 worlds for missions, she would be given a husband. Upon hearing the light in his eyes, Li Yuran immediately agreed to follow the system Su into the small world. World 1, Empress X, who is not favored, wields the power of Regent. World 2, the little white flower of the end of the world is actually a big boss X, the zombie emperor of the end of the world. World 3, entertainment industry pitiful X top-tier actor. Chapter 1. Shaking a charm in the arms of the Regent, 1. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Attention to mind clearance. The male and female protagonists have long mouths, and in the first chapter of each world, I will explain the original plot of the little world in more detail, so there is a bit of talk. The author is writing a book for the first time, hoping that there won't be too much malice. If you don't like it, just quit and don't force yourself to feel uncomfortable. Thank you. In a magnificent palace. On that exquisite and luxurious bed, there was a person lying under the bed curtain. Li Yuran opened her eyes and saw the luxurious red bed curtains. She slowly sat up and looked at them in confusion, wondering where this was. Then a sound came into my ear. Host, we have arrived in the first world. Now we need to do tasks in this world. A white furry kitten suddenly appeared in front of Li Yuran, and her eyes lit up instantly. Before the system could react, Su was pulled over by Li Yuran and placed in her arms for a while. Wow, little thing, you can actually appear in front of me. Hey, you let go of me first. Leo reluctantly let go of the furry kitten in her arms. After leaving Li Yuran's arms, Su floated in the air and said, Host, now I will transmit the identity and character plot of this body to you. You may feel a bit dizzy while transmitting the plot. Li Yuran nodded. Ding, reading memory and plot. Suddenly, memories that didn't belong to me flooded into my mind, making me feel dizzy. This world is an ancient book about the love story between Zexi and Li, written by two young men. It goes from disapproval to praise for love. Ancient fictional literature, history is not good, just understand it, don't hold too high hopes, thank you, and the original owner was a female consort, the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's office, and also the most talented woman in the capital. But the ending was quite tragic, it was like paving the way for the two protagonists, and in the end, they ended up with a ruined family. Li Yuran puzzled and said, why does the protagonist's love involve innocent people? I can feel the residual resentment in the original protagonist's body. By the way, Su, what about the original owner when I enter the original owner's body? You shouldn't have killed her, right? Li leisurely stared at the little white cat in front of him. Su was so scared by her sight that she quickly said. How could I possibly kill her? There is a way in every world, and the way will not allow it. As for why you were able to enter this body, it was I who promised the original owner to avenge her and then sent her to reincarnation before giving you her body, and in the future, you will use the same body in every world. Su looked at Li Yuran and wanted to ask what else, so she spoke up, Host, this world is a shattered world. The system just transmitted the current world plot, but the original plot is not like this. Two plots. Li Yuran said in confusion. Yes, I'll transmit the original plot to you now. Ding, reading the original plot of the world, Li Yuran hugged Su back into his arms, watching the original plot while ruining him. After watching the original plot, Li Yuran was furious. In the original plot, Li Yuran is the female protagonist of the little world, living a life of being favored by her father, mother, and brother. She also arranged a marriage with the male protagonist Zexi when the original protagonist was young. Later on, it was natural for the original owner to grow up and become the regent queen of the Mohara dynasty, while the regent king Shirazaki overthrew the tyrannical ruler of the Mohara dynasty, Li, and became the emperor himself. living happily ever after. Due to a major change in the plot, Liu Ran, who was supposed to be the female lead, became a supporting actress and did not marry the male lead like in the original plot. Instead, she was forced to enter the palace and become an empress, although Emperor Lu Li did not mistreat her. But trapped in this deep palace, and mocked by the harem concubines every day for not being favored by the title of empress alone, the original owner's mentality and health have become increasingly bad over time. However, the original owner does not want to burden his parents and make them worry, so he still lives strong every day. Finally, due to an incident at the Prime Minister's office, the original owner's hope for survival was shattered. Before the original owner could commit suicide, Emperor Lu Li sent someone to deliver a cup of poisoned wine to kill her. Looking at the poisoned wine, the original owner felt even more relieved, so he drank it without hesitation. Now, Lu Li in this world has not become a tyrant. On the contrary, for some reason, the ending has changed and has become a happy life with the male protagonist by Zexi. Ding, Trigger Task 1. Separate Lu Li and Bai Zexi, Ding, Trigger Task 2. Return the plot to the right track and become the female lead. Upon hearing this, Leo furrowed her brows. Ding, there are side quests that the host needs to find themselves. Su, what does a side mission mean? Li Yuran looked at the kitten in his arms, waiting for it to answer. Host, you can do or not do side quests, but if you do side quests, you can earn points. Su Suo was licking her paws in Li Yuran's arms. What is integral? Li Yuran furrowed his small face. Host, points can be used to buy things in the system mall. After speaking, there was an electronic screen in front of Li Yuran. Li Yuran, who had never seen such a thing before, immediately became curious and asked Su, what kind of thing is this? It's so amazing that I've never seen it before. Su looked at Li Ran and said proudly, of course you haven't seen it before. This is something that only the system can have. Su, what do those gray things on the screen mean? Su Sufei walked up to the screen and said, these gray products cannot be used on this plane. Some products can only be sold corresponding to the small world. Otherwise, it would be against the rules for products that should not have appeared to be discovered by the heavens in this world. Li Yuran nodded as if he understood something. Suddenly hearing footsteps, she quickly asked Su to hide. The host doesn't have to worry, except for you, others can't see me. But I can also stay in your sea of consciousness. Su Sufei lay on Li Yuran's shoulder. Madam, have you woken up? It's time to dress up and all the palace ladies have come to pay their respects. The speaker was the dowry maid brought by the original owner to the palace, who grew up with the original owner. In the plot, this little maid saw the original owner die and committed suicide together. Now that the original owner is gone, since I have replaced her, please treat the people around her well. Well, I'm awake. Hua Qing lifted the bed curtain, and Li Yu leisurely put on her shoes and came to the dressing table. Today she asked Hua Qing to find her a light blue palace dress, simple and plain, with an extraordinary temperament even without any makeup. Li Yuran led Hua Qing to the main hall and walked step by step towards the correct position. Oh, the Empress really makes the concubines wait so much. Chapter 2. Shaking a Charm in the Arms of the Regent, 2. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The woman sitting directly below said with a strange tone. Liu Ran thought to herself for a moment and then found out who this person was. She was Li Ruxue, the daughter of the imperial censor family. She entered the palace at the same time as the original master, but the original master became an empress, and she was granted the title of a lady. She was unwilling to stay below the original owner, and coupled with the weak nature of the original owner, he did not argue with her, but instead allowed her to make progress. I'm not the original owner, I'm not used to her. Since I know I am a concubine, I should understand that you are just a concubine. I don't think it's your turn to talk about 3 ways and 4 in this palace, right? Li Yuran looked down at the concubines sitting below. Several concubines glanced at each other, but still lowered their heads as if they couldn't hear. Today's empress is different from usual and still doesn't wade in muddy waters. Li Rushua looked angrily at Li Yoran and spoke up, disregarding his superior etiquette. Li Yoran, if you really consider yourself the empress, it's amazing. Isn't it that the emperor has never been to your place before? You are just a queen with no real name. What kind of show? Coming to greet you is enough to give you face. Li Yuran raised his eyebrows and looked at her leisurely and contentedly. Oh. Is there a name but not a reality? Today, I will let you see if there is a name but not a reality. Someone, Lady Shufei's exit disrespects our palace. Our palace punished her by kneeling at the door for 2 hours. Keep an eye on her, it must take at least 2 hours to let her go back. If you can't keep an eye on her, it's asking. 2 servants walked up to Li Rushue outside and said, Madam Shufei, are you going out by yourself or should we take you out? I don't know the severity of the servant's actions. Madam, you can handle it. Li Rushue stood up and looked at Li Yuran. Li Yuran, will you be allowed to do this when you become emperor? Death, servant, get away from me. At this moment, Li Yuran was talking to Su Su in his heart. Su Su, there's no problem with me doing this, right? Su Su leaned in Li Yuran's arms and said, it's okay, host. You're the queen. Although the emperor never comes to see you, he still takes care of you in the harem. After receiving the answer, Li Yuran said, what are you still waiting for? If you don't pull her out, you'll be punished for her. The 2 servants exchanged a glance and said, I dare not, so I will take Lady Shu out. The other concubines saw this scene and said some nice words to Li Yuran, inviting him. Later, Li Yuran asked them to go back to their respective dormitories, and Li Yuran also returned to his own room and walked towards the couch. On the couch, there was a blue jade incense pillow and a soft silk ice mat. Li leisurely sat on the couch and suddenly thought of something, staring at Su Su. Su Su, you shouldn't have lied to me when you said that, right? Su Su was about to open the system screen and take a look at the world progress bar when she suddenly heard Li Yuran's words and was stunned before realizing what she was saying. This needs to go back to before the arrival of the small world. The fox turned into a little fox and Yuran was bored sleeping in the foxhole. She didn't know who she was or why she was here, only remembered her name. Occasionally chatting with the tree spirits at the entrance of the cave, she learned a lot from these spirits, but she had never gone out to see them, especially curious about the love between men and women. One day, I suddenly heard a voice that she couldn't see but could hear what it was saying. I was curious and asked who it was. I am a system, and you cannot see me now, but I can take you to see the outside world, provided that you help me with tasks accordingly. The fox leisurely transformed into a human form, casually thinking about what it had just said. How do I know if what you said is true or false? Su Su became anxious on the spot and said, if you don't believe me, I'll show you a few worlds now. Li Yuran suddenly felt dizzy and found himself in a different position. The people in this world were dressed strangely, and before he could react, he switched to several different scenes. Then he opened his eyes and found himself back. You should believe me now. Li Yuran thought about the worlds he had just seen and came back to his senses. What tasks do I have to go to those worlds to do? Is it beneficial? I can't just take a look and do tasks for you in vain. Su Su remained silent for a moment. If you complete the task, how about I promise you a request? Su Su was a bit anxious. She had been observing this fox for many days because she had bound many people before, but in the end, it showed that the binding was not successful. Later, she accidentally saw this fox and tried to bind her, only to find that it could bind her. However, after many days, this fox not only slept but also slept. It was afraid that binding the fox without authorization would cause it to explode and instead refused to do the task. In the end, it had no choice but to appear and discuss with her. Oh, it's really difficult. Upon hearing this, Liu Ran's eyes lit up and then asked with a pensive expression, "Really? Then you can give me a husband?" Liu Ran thought of the love and affection mentioned by those monsters before, and she really wanted to experience it. "Okay, now you can bind with me to do tasks." Liu thought for a moment and realized that there was nothing to do anyway. It's quite cost-effective to go out and see if you can still get a husband. I agreed to bind it. How dare I lie to you, the host is so big. You are so kind and smart, I can't bear to lie to you. After Su Su finished speaking, she felt guilty and kept wagging her tail. She thought to herself, the higher-ups have assigned a task to save that adult and said that after completing the task, I can level up. It shouldn't be difficult to find a husband for her then, right? After hearing the answer, Liu Ran nodded half-confidently. Then I heard a hurried voice, "Madam, your majesty is here." Liu Ran frowned. "What are you doing now? Is it because of Lady Shu?" Sure enough, her hypothesis was confirmed later. "Your majesty is here." Liu Ran came outside and learned the etiquette that the original owner had done before, giving him a bow. "Your majesty is in good health." Lu Li then walked into the house and sat down. In the next chapter, the male lead makes a brilliant appearance. Chapter 3. Shaking a Charm in the Arms of the Regent, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Well, I heard you punished Consort Shu to kneel for 2 hours before she could get up. What mistake did she make you so angry? It sounds like asking what happened, but in fact it is more like a reprimand. She doesn't believe that he is an emperor, and the harem still has no eyeliner. Your Majesty may not have known. In the morning, the concubines came to pay their respects, but I arrived a little late because I was feeling unwell. As a result, Consort Shu came up to scold me. Your Majesty's concubine, as the Empress, is also your wife, and she said several unpleasant things afterwards. Many sisters were present. If a concubine scolded my concubine as a queen and couldn't lift her head, she would only say that my concubine could not manage the harem well. Leo picked up a handkerchief and wiped her tearless eyes, but they were still bright red. Upon seeing this scene, Lu Li realized that Li Yuran was so beautiful, and his heart immediately softened. As if thinking of something again, his tone became stern and he said, "Why are you crying?" "I'm asking what happened." The beaver carefree complained in his heart that you just came to pick on me, and now you ask me in turn. I think your Majesty has come to defend Lady Shu. When Lu Li still wants to say something. The father-in-law next to Lu Li ran in and lowered his head to say something to him. He looked a bit gloomy and then stood up. I have something else to deal with. As the Empress, you need to be more magnanimous. Just give Princess Shu a small punishment. I'll leave first and come see you when I have time. Then he shook his sleeve and turned around to leave. Li Yuran walked over to the bed and sat down, as if he hadn't heard that sentence. Su Su, can you know why the emperor left? Su Su immediately flew to Li Yuran and opened the system screen. She saw that another protagonist had entered the palace, so she hurriedly left. Li Yuran picked up the teacup and took a sip, as if thinking of something. Su Su, last time you said you wanted to conquer the male lead, was that what I thought? Su Su used her pink cat paws to tap the heart rate of the male lead in the strategy. Yes, the host, make the male lead fall in love with you. Once your heart rate reaches 100, the task is completed. Su Su, do you think I can meet the male lead in this situation now? After thinking for a moment, Leo couldn't get out of the harem and rolled his eyes at Su Su. Su Su opened the screen and watched the plot, flying in front of Li Yuran. Host, I just took a look. In a few days, your brother Liuchen will return to the capital from the border due to his victory in the battle. The emperor will hold a welcoming banquet, and the regent will also enter the palace. You should find an opportunity to approach him then. Madam, it's time to dress up. Today is the day when the general returns to the capital, and His Majesty will hold a reception banquet tonight. Li Yuran responded and walked over to ask Hua Qing to dress her up. After dressing up, Madam, you are the best and most beautiful person I have ever seen in this world. No one in the entire capital can match you. Sigh. However, Miss, since you entered the palace, you have been feeling depressed every day. When will he be able to come back and take you out of the palace, Miss? Because she was dressed as the queen, she looked leisurely at herself in the mirror. She was dressed in a cloud fay makeup, brocade woven with colorful flowers and butterflies, covered in a flowing dark flower cloud brocade skirt, and draped with a Sioux embroidery moonlight brocade shirt. Her black hair was simply combed with a hanging cloud sideburns, and her blue crystal phoenix hairpin shimmered with dazzling light. She wore a blue night crystal jade bracelet in her hand, and a white sapphire diamond necklace tightly attached to her slender neck. Xing Shui's skin only turned into a faint smoke, the willow eyebrows hooked by Luo Zidai touched the soul, and the thin lips, red in color, stretch out a curve, captivating the soul with their seductive eyes. This body looks very similar to her original appearance, and after dressing up, it is indeed stunning. Li Yuran couldn't help but sigh. Of course it's beautiful, it's the system that matches your soul the most, and it's also the best-looking one to help you guide the male lead. Su, can you hear what I'm thinking in my heart? Li Yuran asked in confusion. Of course, I can block it if you don't want me to hear your voice, host. Su lay on Li Yuran's shoulder. Block it. I don't like people prying into my inner voice. In the evening, Li Yuran, who had already taken his seat at the banquet, kept his eyes open in his heart and talked to Su until he heard the servant's voice. The regent is here. Li Yuran immediately regained his senses and looked up at the door, only to see a figure slowly walking in. The man was dressed in a black python robe, embroidered with dark patterns on gold thread, and his handsome features were stunning. He was full of domineering aura, and his eyes were as deep and sharp as ink jade, as if he could penetrate the human heart and see from afar. He was truly like a divine king walking out of the heavenly palace. Zexi felt a strong gaze and looked over, only to see the woman sitting on the high platform, her lips curved and she smiled slightly. I finally saw you, but you're really not obedient, he whispered. Prince, what are you saying? The guard beside him asked. It's nothing. Then he walked to the middle and said, Long live your majesty, long live Empress. Uncle Huang, you don't need to be polite. Please take your seat quickly, said Luli hastily. Zexi was the eldest son of the eldest princess and the youngest cousin of the previous emperor, so Luli called him Emperor Uncle. Zexi then walked to the first position below the side of the main seat and sat down. But Li Yuran was not so comfortable anymore, because just now, when Zexi shouted to the empress, Li Yuran was covered in hair. And he stared at her with an indescribable gaze, then called out to Su in his heart to ask about its situation. Host, I just watched the plot and there was no problem. Maybe the male host only took a few more glances at you because you are good looking. Li Yuran was also half convinced, lowered his head and picked up the glass in front of him to take a sip. Su, now I have seen Zexi, but how should I approach him? After all, as the head of the harem, how can I follow outsiders' opinions? Yes, since she entered this world, she found that being the queen had no freedom at all. I can only stay in the dormitory or take a walk in the imperial garden every day. It's even harder to come up with a palace than to climb to the sky. No wonder the protagonist in the plot is unhappy. Host, I have a way not to know if I can see the male lead. Su relied on others not being able to see it and always surrounded Li Yuran. Well, you said you came up with a solution. Chapter 4. Shaking a Charm in the Arms of the Regent, 4. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Su, what was the method you just mentioned? Li Yuran accidentally caught a glimpse of Zexi and found him staring at him. Later, I heard Su say, the host is like this. The original owner and Zexi had a marriage contract, but 2 years ago, Zexi didn't know what had happened. After checking the system plot, he didn't describe it and only said that he had secretly left Beijing, and only returned recently. It was also because of Bai Zexi's departure that the original owner entered the palace. You can ask the maid to tell his guards to invite him to meet in the backyard after the banquet is over and talk about the marriage later. After thinking for a moment, Liu summoned Hua Qing to inform the guards next to the regent that Hua Qing had returned shortly after. Approaching Liu Ran, she lowered her head and whispered, "Madam, I have already informed you that the regent king knows. The banquet is over, in the backyard." Li Yuran stood in the pavilion in the backyard, and soon footsteps could be heard from behind. Su Su informed that it was Bai Zexi. Suddenly, someone hugged him behind him, and Li Yuran froze in an instant. His mind was also blank at the moment. "Of course, I miss you so much, but you are really not obedient. I just left for 2 years. 2 years ago, I thought you would marry me and return home. But I didn't expect you to marry someone else and even become the queen. Is the position of queen so attractive? How do you think I should punish you better?" Bai Zexi placed his hand on Li Yuran's waist and rubbed it. But at this moment, Liu Ran's mind had no more time to think about these things. He directly called Su Su to ask about the situation. How did the male lead and the original lead know each other? And his tone was still very familiar. Su Su was also foolish and immediately opened the screen to browse through the plot. Ding, trigger side quests, clear misunderstandings with the male lead, live a happy life with him until old age, and now teleport the missing plot for the host. After watching this plot, Liu Ran realized that the world plot was incomplete. I don't know why everyone doesn't remember this plot, it seems like it was deliberately erased. The original protagonist and Bai Zexi grew up together, and the male protagonist, De Yuanzhu, was 5 years old because Princess De Shang and the original protagonist's mother were close friends in their boudoir. So when the original owner was very young, he was often taken by his mother to the princess's mansion. After spending a long time with the male owner, they gradually developed feelings for each other. As they grew up, they also learned that they had a marriage contract with each other, so they thought they would get married after the original owner and her husband were married. However, now it has become like this. Host, I just checked and found out that this is a world infected with a virus. So when you didn't come, the plot showed that it was still in a two-man world. After you came, all you needed to do was put the plot back on track. Who knew that the virus invaded the small world, causing a change in the plot, which resulted in this missing plot not appearing. So the male protagonist Bai Zexi always feels that there is a profound relationship, which is why there is no memory of the original protagonist in the male protagonist's memory even after the original protagonist is not alive. Moreover, due to the influence of the plot, this relationship with the original protagonist is given to Lu Li. Just now the System Bureau informed me that the problem is with Lu Li, but don't worry, the host. The task you need to do is to get the plot back on track. Liu Ran's mood is very complicated because the residual emotions of the original owner also affect her own mood. Well, I know now. Did that mean killing Lu Li would change the trajectory of the world? Su Su was frightened and quickly said, Host, you can't kill Lu Li casually now. He belongs to one of the male protagonists in the small world and has luck on his body. You must eliminate his luck before you can kill him. Upon hearing this, Liu Ran felt even more resentment in her heart, and soon found herself still in Bai Zexi's arms. She broke free from her embrace and turned to face the male lead. Because Su Su once said that in the small world, it is necessary to maintain a bit of character, and with tears in her eyes, Liu Ran tried to smile as much as possible and looked at Bai Zexi. Zexi brother, I'm sorry I didn't wait for you. But I really miss you so much. Now that you're back safely, I can rest assured. It's me who hurt you. I'm already very happy to see you again. Hua Qing didn't care about etiquette when she heard her own young lady's words. She knew that her young lady had always liked the regent and was looking forward to his return. If it weren't for the emperor threatening the young master and master to the young lady, how could the young lady enter the palace and be gloomy all day in this deep palace? Regent, please help my young lady and take her out of the palace. Hua Qing knelt in front of Bai Zexi. Hua Qing, shut up. If you say more, I will send you back to the Prime Minister's mansion, said Li Yuran, holding back her tears and trying not to cry, Miss. Su Sufei watched the scene in the air. The host is so amazing, I thought this performance was real. Upon hearing Su Su's words, Leo almost failed. Didn't you say you wanted to maintain your character? I just said these words according to the original owner's personality. And when I say this, the male lead will actually feel even more heartbroken, and then go back to investigate why the original lead entered the palace. I just didn't expect Hua Qing to have such a deep affection for the original lead as expected. Bai Zexi immediately said to Hua Qing, you keep talking. Hua Qing knelt on the ground and looked up at Li Yuran, then said to Bai Zexi, Miss has been waiting for you to come back from the Prime Minister's mansion, but days have passed and I haven't heard from you. But half a year ago, I received a decree that your Majesty wanted to marry Miss into the palace. When the Miss found out, she went to ask the master to come in and ask your Majesty to retract this decree. But the next day, Miss was summoned into the palace. After the young lady returned from the palace to the mansion, she locked herself in her room for a day and a night. The next day, she told the old lady that she wanted to enter the palace. Later on, I accidentally heard the young lady crying in the room and told the master about the incident. Enough, stop talking. Li Yuran couldn't help but shed tears in an instant. Bai Zexi grabbed Li Yuran's wrist and pulled him in front of him. Li Yuran was pulled so hard that she shed some tears physiologically, and unconsciously spoke up, it hurts. Bai Zexi looked at the pitiful person in front of him, with red eyes and tears still hanging on his eyelashes. He instantly regretted dragging her lightly just now. Do you know it hurts? Why were you so stubborn just now? Bai Zexi held the person in his arms with heartache, rubbed her red wrist, and Li Yuran leaned against his chest. His tone was like playing coquettish, even if you hurt me, you still hurt me. Bai Zexi reluctantly patted her and said, all right, it's Zexi's brother who's not good. Can you forgive him? Li Yuran hid in his arms, and when he heard the words, Guaibao, he blushed and whispered a little. At this moment, Bai Zexi thought of what Hua Qing had just said, and a hint of malice flashed in his eyes. Is Lu Li so dishonest? Either someone else should sit in this position. And at this moment, Li Yuran's face turned red for real. She had lived for so many years and no one had ever called her that. Host, you blushed. Aren't you shy anymore? At this moment, Su Su did not appear outside, but stayed in the system space, watching Li Yuran on the screen. At this moment, Li Yuran felt that his entire fox was not doing well, it was too embarrassing. Shut up. Look at the progress bar and heart rate, hurry up and do the task. Su Su called out the task bar and heart rate, shouting loudly. Emphasize. The male protagonist is physically and mentally clean when the female protagonist enters the small world. Su Su is a beginner, and the plot seen in the system may not be true. This book is about Shuangjie. Don't spray it. Chapter 5. Shaking a Charm in the Arms of the Regent, v. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De Ko Lois Ara Trong Quatrin Lay Text. Chapter 6. Bai Zexi's X-Beaver Leisure Chapter. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The author first explains to the little cuties the heart rate in the drama and the relationship between the male lead and the original female lead in Little World. The heart rate of the first world is not what the female lead thinks. Because Su Su was too stupid to carefully understand and was deceived by the people in the System Bureau, every body it found in the small world had already been replaced by the female protagonist's body in the System Bureau, and there was no original owner. To be precise, the male and female protagonists in the original plot of The Little World are not the main body of Leo Ran, but in the dual male plot, Leo Ran is the main body of the female protagonist. Our main male protagonist also appears in the third plot of The Little World male protagonist. So there are a total of 3 plots. The first one is the story of the love between the male and female protagonists in the small world of the original plot. The second plot is that due to external factors, the original plot has been turned into a 2-man story, but at this time, the original female protagonist in the small world, Li Yuran, has become the main female protagonist in our main text. The third plot is about the female lead in our main text being brought by Su Su to do a mission. When Li Yuran is doing tasks, she always resonates with the original protagonist's emotions. In fact, that is the second plot she experienced on her own. Neither she nor Su Su knew that the second plot was her own. Do you understand this explanation? Don't misunderstand that the male and female protagonists are not clean in body and mind. Su Su's so-called sending the original protagonist for reincarnation does not have such a thing. It is a lie fabricated by the System Bureau to deceive it into saying that it is sending those people for reincarnation, but in reality, it is collecting the female protagonist's soul. The female protagonist has no memory because her soul is incomplete. Sending her to these worlds is not only to repair the world, but also to collect her own soul. So in the plot, we naturally feel that there is still resentment in the original owner's body many times, but in reality, it is the experience of her soul in the second plot that causes her to resonate with the emotions in her body. So little cuties, don't worry about whether the male protagonist loves the original protagonist or the female protagonist. He always loves the female protagonist, and from the moment the female protagonist first enters this world, the male protagonist will only give his emotions to the female protagonist. So, it can be considered love at first sight, and the female protagonist has no memory or experience of these. However, the residual emotions will also make her fall in love at first sight when she meets the male protagonist. Therefore, the female protagonist may have wild thoughts in the early stages, but our male protagonist is talkative, and he will use sincerity to make the female protagonist understand his intentions. Also, emphasize. The plot of The Two Men is not aimed at Dan May's novels. I really enjoy reading Dan May, but these worlds are the plot that you need to wait until the ending to understand. The author will read each comment and interact with you to answer your questions. Thank you, the little ones who read this book, and I wish you a pleasant reading. Small Theater. Guaibao, come over and let your husband kiss you. Bai Zexi brought the fox leisurely to the resort to relax and enjoy the benefits. Li leisurely glanced at him and said, "No, you go away, you old pervert. How about you ask me to give you a kiss, dear? I'll give you a gift, okay?" Bai Zexi held back in his heart, waiting for Li to leisurely take the bait. As expected, what are you going to give me? Li Yuran looked at him in confusion. "Wife, please kiss me first." Li Yuran was very curious about the gift he said, so he tiptoed and kissed Bai Zexi. Just as he was about to leave, he was held down by Bai Zexi and kissed until Li Yuran's legs were soft. Bai Zexi picked up the fox and smiled proudly. "Good boy, let's go. I'll take you back to the house to see the gift." Subsequently, omitting 10,000 words to self-supplement, Bai Zexi, "Get out of here and don't touch me for a month." Bai Zexi pitifully hugged his own baby and kept admitting his mistake. More than a month later, Bai Zexi happily picked up Li Yuran and kissed him with a ultrasound sheet, saying, "Good boy, look, the gift is coming soon." Li Yu stared at him calmly and said, "Did you mean it? Will the baby stop loving me when it's born in the future?" Bai Zexi was unjustly killed. He wanted to have a child with Li Yuran just to keep her bound forever. Wei Chu Baba looked at Li Yuran and said, "Wife, in my heart, you will always be the most important, even if you have a child in the future, you will always be the first." "Alright, I know you love me the most. Let's go home," Li Yu said. Looking at his aggrieved expression, Bai Zexi smiled and took his wife home. End of the Small Theater. Chapter 7. Shaking a Charm in the Arms of the Regent, 6. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Bai Zexi didn't pay any attention to what Lu Li said, but instead approached him and said, "Lu Li, do you really think that I don't know the dark guards and forces you have privately raised? I just turn a blind eye. If I want to sideline you, I won't give you these opportunities to cultivate your power. Moreover, I don't value the throne. Also, even the people of this king dare to move. Who gave you the courage, Lu Li?" Lu Li was frightened by Bai Zixi words and tone, and took a step back. "Bai Zixi, why am I doing this? Don't you understand? After so many years, I don't believe you can't feel it." This is the first time his name has been called since Bai Zixi brought him out of the cold palace for cultivation. Bai Zixi's tone was so cold that he said, "Lu Li, what do you think I should understand? If it weren't for me bringing you out of the cold palace to personally teach you, do you think you could live until now? It's best for you to give me the wrong thoughts. There are still some things that I haven't reconciled with you yet, so it's best for me to handle them properly, otherwise my own nature will be different." Lu Li had a wounded expression on his face, but in the end, he blurted out his inner words. He also understood that if he spoke out, there would be no way out. "Bai Zixi, I have liked you for many years. Why don't you look at me? What's good about Liu Ran? Let you protect her everywhere. I thought if you were transferred out for 2 years, you would forget her. I even married her to the harem and humiliated her. When you come back and see her enter the palace, you will dislike her and won't like her anymore. Why are you still staring at her after you come back? Can't you just look at me? I care more about you and like you more than she does. I should be by your side." After hearing these words, Bai Zixi's face turned completely black and he looked at him with disgust. "Lu Li, don't you think it's absurd? I'm not as good as Longyang, and your so-called liking is just that I brought you out when you were in the most difficult situation. You didn't like it. Finally, I advised you to put aside your thoughts. Guard this country well. If you don't want to be my king, you can support others. There are other things that you don't need to worry about, and I will find a way to solve them." After Bai Zixi finished speaking, he strode out with great strides. Upon hearing Bai Zixi's words, Lu Li felt like a knife stabbing into his heart. He gritted his teeth and desperately hid his unwillingness and hatred towards Liu Ran in his heart. Is it because Liu died that he saw me? Lu Li had a hidden idea in his heart. At night, the phoenix crows in the palace. "Host, I just checked the task bar and it turned out to be 50% now." Su Supiao displayed a screen in front of her in the air, with pink fleshy paws swiping back and forth on the screen. How did the plot accelerate so much? What happened these past few days? Liu Ran, who had just finished bathing, was sitting on the bed, wiping his hair with a towel. "I just checked and it was this morning that the male lead and the emperor talked about something in the study that accelerated the progress bar." Su was about to turn off the system screen when he heard Liu Ran ask, Su, take a look at how much your heart rate is now." Then Su switched to his heart rate and looked at the progress bar. The host has already reached 85. Upon hearing the answer, Liu Ran's mind flashed with the look of Bai Zixi, and his heart suddenly felt uncomfortable. She doesn't understand why. Is she sick? Can Su help me check my body? After listening, Su thought that Liu Ran was sick and immediately scanned her whole body. I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw that there was no problem displayed on the system. "Host, I just checked and you are in good health and not sick." Liu Ran placed the towel that had finished wiping her hair on the dressing table and then lay in bed, ready to sleep when she suddenly heard the sound of someone entering her room. Liu Ran sat up and asked, "Did Hua Qing come in?" No one answered. Just as I was about to lift the bed curtain and see what was happening, Su reminded me, "Host, it's the male lead." After learning about it, Liu Ran breathed a sigh of relief and tidied up her clothes. She lifted the bed curtain and saw Bai Zixi standing by the bed. Although she learned from Su that it was him, she was still startled. "Brother Zixi, why did you come to my room? If anyone finds out..." Liu looked at him calmly and said, biting his lips before continuing. Bai Zexi walked over and sat by her bed, touching her head. Fool, of course I came to see you after missing you. Why, but you don't want to see me, do you? Li Yuran quickly waved his hand and said, No, brother Zexi, I just feel that it's not appropriate for a lonely man and a widow to live together in a room so late. Bai Zexi smiled and teased her, How about brother Zexi elope with you out of the palace? Li Yu widened his eyes and looked at him incredulously. Brother Zexi, I cannot leave the palace. If I leave the palace, the emperor will blame the prime minister's office. I cannot implicate my parents. Bai Zexi hugged Liu Ran closely and said along her back hair, Silly Ran, brother Zexi has come up with a solution. You can probably be taken out of the palace tomorrow, and then you can go back to the mansion and gather with your family. After hearing these words, Liu Ran's eyes lit up and he asked in a cheerful tone, Really? Brother Zexi, what method did you think of? Upon hearing this tone, Bai Zexi also knew that the little girl was very happy now. Really, can brother Zexi still deceive you? I found a woman of your age and asked her to disguise herself as the second miss of the Prime Minister's mansion, who is twins with you. When the time comes, I will publicly say that the second miss married into the palace at that time. When the time comes, I will secretly take you out and bring that woman into the palace so that no one will doubt you. I heard that you were not present when I was in theft, so no one from those ministers has seen the appearance of the empress, so no one will know about replacing her. And that woman voluntarily entered the palace, knowing that my family is naturally kind-hearted and unwilling to see anyone like you. After listening to what he had done for her, Liu Ran couldn't help but feel happiness in her heart. Chapter 8. Shaking a Charm in the Arms of the Regent, 7. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. It's getting late, but go to bed quickly. I'll wait for you to fall asleep before leaving. Bai Zexi let go of the person in his arms and let her lie down, covering her with a blanket. Leo obediently lay on the bed and looked at the man, wanting to ask a question, but got stuck in her throat and didn't say anything. Then she said good night to Bai Zexi and closed her eyes before falling asleep. After a while, Bai Zexi saw that the person on the bed was asleep and gently stood up to leave. After returning to the royal mansion, inside the study, did I ask you to check and find it? Bai Zexi looked at Chang Feng kneeling in front of him with a cold expression on his face and said, The prince has found it, but he's not quite sure. Chang Feng finished speaking with trembling fear, and in an instant, he felt that the temperature around him had dropped a lot. What I want is the result. It's not uncertainty. Bai Zexi tapped his hand haphazardly on the desk, and Chang Feng couldn't help but feel disappointed when he thought of the person the clue pointed to. Returning to the prince, it's Mo Ying. In the past 2 years, I have been accompanying the prince southward to handle affairs, and Mo Ying has been in the dark. Many things are handled by him on behalf of the prince. It wasn't until half a month ago that Mo Ying told his subordinates that he wanted to switch with me. He was in the dark and I was in the bright. That's why you changed to me on your way back to the capital. Prince Bai Zexi's eyebrows furrowed as he never expected it to be Mo Ying, who was about as big as Chang Feng. But Chang Feng grew up with me since my mother was young. Mo Ying, on the other hand, rescued him when he passed by a temple at the age of 9 and saw him being beaten to death. He then took him back to his mansion and trained in the Dark Guard camp for 2 years before being placed next to him. He has no reason to do this either. Bai Zexi's eyes darkened as he thought of it. Bring him to my king. Yes. Chang Feng stood up and went out. Not long after, I saw Chang Feng bring back a person and said, Prince, I have brought you here. Bai Zexi looked at Mo Ying kneeling on the ground with sharp eyes like knives. Mo Ying, how many years have you been by my side? The person kneeling on the ground seemed to have understood something, and spoke with difficulty. I have been staying with the prince for 8 years. It's been 8 years, really fast, but I don't understand why you're doing this. Bai Zexi stood up and walked up to him. I don't know what the prince is saying. As soon as he finished speaking, he was kicked by the person in front of him, and Chang Feng, who was kneeling beside him, looked disappointed as Moing didn't speak. Since he doesn't know, then Chang Feng will take him to the dark guard room. Others don't know about the secret guard room, but these people who serve as secret guards for the prince are clear and honest. Entering is equivalent to not being able to come out thinking about what Moing has been doing for so many years. Chang Feng gritted his teeth and replied. Yes. Li leisurely lay in by Zexi's arms, playing with a handful of man's hair in his hand, and asked the man, Brother Zexi, do you like the current Ran Ran or the original Ran Ran? Bai Zexi looked at her gently and answered, Of course everyone likes it. Liu Ran seemed to be angry and insisted on asking a clear question. No, Brother Zexi, you must choose one. Bai Zexi looked at Li Yuran in confusion and asked why. However, I love it both before and now, and I will do the same in the future. Did someone tell you something that made you think too much? No, I just feel like I've become the past tense. You should like me now, right? The man in front of her pushed her away in an instant and said. You're not my Ran Ran, where has my Ran Ran gone? Liu Ran was frightened by his action and looked into his eyes, saying. I am your Ran Ran, don't you like me anymore? The man who had just finished speaking before meeting, with a fierce expression on his face, grabbed Li Yuran's neck and asked, You're not my Ran Ran, who are you, my Ran Ran? Li Yuran's face turned purple as he was pinched by Bai Zexi. He wanted to break free from the man's hand but couldn't do it. He watched as a tear streamed from the corner of his eye. Who? Li sat up leisurely and suddenly, touching his neck to find that there was nothing wrong. Looking back, it turned out to be a dream. After a while, I found myself sweating profusely and called for Hua Qing. Miss, what's wrong? The fox leisurely lifted the bed curtain. It's okay, I had a nightmare. Can you help me get some water? I need to take a shower now. Yes. Miss, Hua Qing turned around and went out. Su. Li leisurely got out of bed, walked to the table, poured a cup of tea, and drank it. What's wrong, host? Su yawned and flew out of the space in front of Liu Ran. I would like to ask, how is the heart rate calculated? Is the male lead's heart rate for me so high because of his love for the original protagonist, or is it for me now? Liu Ran finally asked the question in her heart. I don't know about that either. How about I report it to the System Bureau and see how they respond? Host. Su looked at Li Yuran in confusion. Li Yuran thought of the dream he had just had and seemed to understand something self-deprecating, then spoke up, Miss, the water is good and you can take a shower now. Hua Qing knocked on the door and replied. However, I picked you up and went home. Li Yuran had just finished dressing up and was sitting on the couch reading a book when he heard this sentence coming from the door. Then I saw Bai Zexi walking in, with a woman beside me. Thinking back to what he said yesterday, I understood that this woman should be the one they had replaced. Chu Xingyao walked up to Liu Ran and, to be precise, now became Liu Yao, speaking up, I have seen the Empress. Bai Zexi said with a displeased expression upon hearing her words. Don't call her Empress. From today on, you will be the master of the harem, and Liu Ran will be your elder sister. And remember to let Xia Qing change your appearance during the day. There's no need to be like Ran Ran, just 7 points similar. The fox is leisurely puzzled. Why does she have to change her appearance? And look like me? Bai Zexi looked at the silly Liu in front of him. However, have you forgotten the concubines in the harem? It was only after his reminder that he realized that all the concubines in the harem had seen him before. If he had changed his appearance, he would immediately know what the situation was. At this moment, Chu Xingyao was shining with her eyes as she looked at the two people in front of her, and her heart was pounding with excitement. As a modern person who had traveled to ancient times, she couldn't stop the urge to bump into the CP. That's right, Chu Xingyao is still a traveler. She came to this place suddenly due to a car accident, and was later found by Zexi's people to tell her about it. She agreed without even thinking about it. Because the family situation of the owner of her body is too complicated, it is still one thing whether she can survive. It is too difficult to survive in ancient times. Of course, we should leave the palace now. Yao Yao is not a bad little cutie, she just wants to live well. The male lead promised her life's safety before agreeing so decisively, not to deceive the male and female leads. So rest assured. Chapter 9. Shaking a Charm in the Arms of the Regent, 8. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Liu Ran changed off her palace attire, dressed in a light purple dress. Her hair was casually rolled up, and a white orchid hairpin was slanted in a slightly pink tone, giving her a pure and charming appearance. Zexi saw Liu Ran change into clothes and walked over with a smile to grab her hand. However, let's go home. Liu Ran looked at the gentle and elegant man in front of him and responded with a smile, A step appeared. Uncle Huang, where are you planning to take my empress? Lu Li stared fixedly at Zexi's hand holding Liu Ran, then looked up at them, and then at the unfamiliar woman next to him. Chu Xingyao felt goosebumps all over her body when Lu Li looked at her. Tsk. Why is the gaze at the regent not quite right? I shouldn't have. I have eaten some big melons, forget it, keep watching. Upon hearing these words, Zexi frowned and looked at him coldly. Your Majesty, are you confused? Your queen is the second lady of the Prime Minister's mansion next to me, and I am holding your imperial aunt. Zexi gave Chu Xingyao a glance. After seeing Zexi's gaze, Your Majesty, after not coming to the harem for a long time, did you mistake your sister for a concubine? In ancient times, it should have been called a minister's concubine, right? I wouldn't have called it wrong, but seeing that emperor's face turned almost charcoal black. Can I be the first person to get stuck right after wearing it? I still want to enjoy life. After hearing these words, Zexi looked at Lu Li with a playful expression on his face. Lu Li gritted his teeth and looked at Chu Xingyao. Speak up and say, you lift your head. Me. It's been a long time since I saw the queen. Let me take a good look. Fortunately, Chu Xingyao had a thick skin, and after listening, she pretended under pressure to look at the emperor as if nothing had happened. It looks good. After listening to the emperor's words, Chu Xingyao immediately rolled her eyes in her heart and had no fondness for him at all. Although my appearance is not as beautiful as the one in front of me, it is at least very good. Who should I show him this strange and sinister look? My mother still looks down on you, and on the surface, she still smiles in her heart. Your Majesty, thank you for your praise. Lu Li looked at her coldly. Fool. I really don't know if I'm pretending or if I can't hear what I'm saying. Zexi didn't pay much attention to how they were doing. Then I'll go back with your imperial aunt first. I can't even recognize my own empress. It's better to recognize people in the palace. I haven't taught you this since I was young. After finishing speaking, he leisurely pulled the fox and left the palace. Lu Li's jealousy grew stronger as he watched the two of them leave. When I saw Chu Xingyao, she disappeared without a trace as if the person just now was not him. But he still didn't hide it from Chu Xingyao's eyes. At this moment, Chu Xingyao felt. Singers don't change their faces as quickly as he does, no wonder he's not likable. Tsk. Looking back at the scene just now, it was really a big show. He loved him, he loved her, and she also loved him. It was so explosive. If it were put in modern times, it would definitely be headline news. Lu Li glanced at Chu Xingyao's constantly changing expression and then left. When Chu Xingyao regained her senses, she found that the person had already left. Hey, it's boring. Xia Qing, come and help me change my appearance. I need to change into a new outfit and stroll around the palace. I have never seen what the palace looks like, even in modern times, I don't have time to see it. Now there is a queen who can always openly stroll around. Yes, Empress Dowager. This sentence from Empress Dowager made Chu Xingyao almost drool and choke on herself. Hey! Is it really impossible to go back? My computer, my phone, my potato chips, milk tea, fried skewers. Since I can't go back, let's start a career. At the entrance of the Prime Minister's office, my dear daughter, you have finally returned. Madame Li held Li leisurely and wept. The Prime Minister watched as his wife and daughter cried together, and his heart was filled with immense sorrow. Still, Li Yuchen reacted first, "Mother, sister, the prince is still here, let's go to the mansion first." At this moment, the Prime Minister also realized. Yes, even when I was excited, I forgot about it. Please forgive me, Prince. It's just that I'm so happy to see Ranran back safely. If it weren't for Chener's reminder, our family wouldn't have stayed at the door for so long. Bai Zishi looked at his lover in someone else's arms, feeling extremely depressed, even though it was Ranran's mother. Oh, forget it. I feel much more comfortable thinking that after getting married, I can only hug myself. No problem, this king knows that the Prime Minister is eager for his daughter. Li Hengyu avoided some and said to Bai Zishi, "Prince, please come in first." Bai Zishi nodded and entered the Prime Minister's mansion. In the main hall the Prime Minister looked at Bai Zishi in front and said, "Prince, please take your seat." Bai Zishi then walked over. "Xiao Cui, show the prince the tea." Madame Li said. Liuchen stood up and bowed to Bai Zishi. "Thank you very much for taking Ranner out of the palace this time. If the prince needs me for anything in the future, I will fulfill my mission. General, you don't need to be polite. You are both Ranran's elder brother and my elder brother in the future. Prime Minister, Prime Minister's wife, should my marriage with Ranran be put on the agenda now?" Li Hengyu glanced at his wife. "Prince, but she just returned from the palace. Do you think she's a bit anxious?" After hearing these words, Bai Zishi picked up a teacup from the table and took a sip from his mouth, then glanced at Li Yuran, who was eating pastries without a heart or mind. A helpless smile, "Prime Minister, why not ask Ranran for his opinion?" Is it my turn now? What are you asking me? I am really too hungry. I didn't even have breakfast in the palace, so I was brought back by Bai Zishi. Bai Zishi was captivated by her silly and cute appearance, and smiled indulgently. However, the Prime Minister said he would marry you to me, what do you think? The Prime Minister was startled by Bai Zishi's thick-skinned face. Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by Bai Zishi's gaze, and when he spoke, he swallowed back. Looking at my own silly daughter is also very helpless. After a long silence, Su Su suddenly spoke. Host, promise him. Only by marrying the male lead will it be easier to conquer him and complete tasks. After hearing Su Su's words, Li Yuran thought for a moment that this was indeed the fastest and best way to conquer Bai Zishi. So he pretended to be very happy and said. Ah. Dad, really? I'm willing. I'm willing. Li Yuran responded. Immediately, he saw his own mother, father, and brother looking at him with a strange look, and his small face became confused again. Did my answer make them too happy? At this moment, the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's wife, and Li Yuchen's heart was filled with resentment. Only Bai Zishi happily looked at his lovely and loving Ranran. With a smile on his face, he spoke to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, let's first set a date for our wedding. Chapter 10. Shaking a charm in the arms of the Regent, 9. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. At night, Li leisurely lay in his own chamber. Susu, I haven't seen you for a long time. I miss you now. Come out and let me hug you. Su flew out helplessly and appeared in front of Li Yuran. Hey, even though he was trying to hurt me, he just said seriously that he missed me and wanted to hug me. The system is speechless. As expected, Li Yuran's sinful little hand rubbed against Su Su. Su Su suddenly received a message on the system screen, which opened in front of Li Yuran and only heard a voice message coming from inside. Su Su, protect your host. And the heartbeat value you asked. The heartbeat value of each male protagonist in the world will only be displayed to your host and will not be mixed with the emotions of the original world owner. So you can rest assured that the first world is AAB.level world, so let's try it out for you. See you again. After hearing these words, Li Yuran was instantly happy in his heart, as if a flower had exploded. So, he also likes me, right? What I like is my carefree nature, not my original owner. It turns out it's not my wishful thinking. Li Yuran thought of the slightly raised corners of his mouth. Host, I just checked my heart rate again and it's already 90%. If it's about the host's emotions, then the host is so amazing. Surprisingly, he directly made the male lead like you and your heart rate is so high, oh no. It's not like, it's love. After reading it, Su Su nestled back in the arms of Li Yuran. After hearing these words, Li Yuran spoke to Su Su with some confusion and asked, Su Su, is this heart rate different from liking and loving? Of course it's different. 0% are strangers, 30% are nodding acquaintances, 50% are friends, 65% are like, and 80% are love. The male lead's love for you now exceeds 80%, which is definitely love. Su Su's tail wagged happily as she thought that task 2 was almost completed. Host, if it weren't for your first mission, I would have thought the male protagonist recognized that the soul in your body wasn't the original protagonist, and then fell in love with you directly. Su Su thought for a moment again and directly denied that it was impossible. But Li Yuran caught the key. Su Su, I want to know if this world is over, can I still meet him in the next world? Of course, beep. Li Yuran. Su Su. A warning appeared in Su Su's mind, do not tell the truth to fast walkers. The first warning, the second one will be punished by lightning strikes. Su Su was scared and the whole cat was not doing well. Li Yuran couldn't tell the truth halfway through listening to it, and immediately smiled. That's great, as long as every world is his, then I have the motivation to continue with the task. Su Su thought Li Yuran didn't hear clearly, host, of course it's impossible. Just do the task well and remember not to fall in love with every male lead in the world. Otherwise, I will erase your memories and emotions at the end of the small world. Upon hearing these words, Li Yuran couldn't help but be surprised that she could still clear her memories and emotions. No, I'm waiting for you to give me a husband. How could I fall in love with someone else, said Li Yuran calmly after knowing what he wanted to know. Leo happily hugged Su Su and fell asleep. In the private room on the second floor of Zuotingshuan. Has anything happened in the palace recently? The speaker was a man dressed in a moonlight white brocade robe, with a picturesque appearance and cold and proud eyes. The guard beside him replied, Prince, some time ago our people saw the regent being taken to the imperial study by the people next to the emperor. It is said that there seemed to be a big argument inside, and when the regent came out, his face was also quite ugly. The next day, the empress in the palace was replaced, but few people knew about it. Even those who knew about it told him that the empress had always been the second lady of the prime minister's office. The man picked up the teacup on the table, took a sip, and put it down. Oh. If it were the second miss of the prime minister's mansion, I don't know when the second miss of the prime minister's mansion will be available. I'm afraid it's interesting where our uncle found a replacement. Why do you think the emperor's younger brother should take advantage of his absence in the capital to cultivate his own power and undermine his power, and even marry the emperor's fiancée A.E. to humiliate him? I don't know, but I accidentally learned about another matter. Speak up. I learned that the dark guards who were close to the regent's side were secretly dealt with a while ago. The dark guards were still with the regent since he was young. Lu Qing smiled slightly. Oh, Uncle Huang has always been like this. As long as he touches on the young lady of the Prime Minister's family, there is no reason to say that. It seems that the secret guard may have had an ulterior motive and let the young lady of the Prime Minister's family have an accident. Alright, let's go into the palace and see this new queen. After dressing up, Chu Xingyao took Xia Qing to stroll around the palace for a while and arrived at the imperial garden. Looking down and walking, I thought to myself, oh, it's so boring. I've been wandering around for a while, and it feels like everything looks similar. It's so painful without a phone. As she walked, Xia Qinggang beside her wanted to remind her. Ah. Who is it? Don't you know how to walk and take a look? Chu Xingyao felt like she had hit a hard-meat shield. Then she lifted her head and saw a man she had never seen before. Lu Qing would see Chu Xingyao walking with her head down, deliberately not avoiding her. Miss, it seems like you bumped into it just now, right? Lu Qing chuckled softly. Chu Xingyao was already extremely depressed by such a collision, but now hearing his laughter, the fire in her heart rubbed against it. I didn't see it, didn't you? At this point, Chu Xingyao had completely forgotten that it was in ancient times, and had completely forgotten all about etiquette and other things. Xia Qing next to her wished she could cover Chu Xingyao's mouth, sweating sigma, PLLL. Madam, this is the king of Xiaoyao. The emperor's elder brother. Xia Qing whispered a reminder in Chu Xingyao's ear. Xia Qing walked up to Lu Qing and saluted, saying, Please forgive me, Prince. The Empress just accidentally bumped into her. No problem, I'm also at fault. I should give way to your lady. Lu Qing thought to himself that Chu Xingyao's angry expression just now was so cute and interesting. He had never met such a woman before. After listening to what they said, Chu Xingyao instantly came to her senses. She is now in ancient times and not in modern times. It's over. It's over. You shouldn't be silenced if you offend the prince, right? Oh. Chu Xingyao, who was worried about her own life, had no idea that Lu Qing's martial arts skills and hearing were stronger than ordinary people. Even if she spoke quietly, she would be heard clearly. Chu Xingyao was extremely panicked and asked Xia Qing carefully, Did I offend him just now? Will I be silenced if I offend the prince? At this moment, Xia Qing listened to Chu Xingyao's words and then saw Lu Qing's playful smile. Destroy it. Lu Qing was playfully watching Zexi, along with Chu Xingyao, who had just looked haughty and confident. Xia Qing was already out of sight and whispered to Chu Xingyao. Madam, stop talking. It's getting late, we should go back to the palace. If we don't go back to the palace again, we'll really be silenced, hey. Why did you send me to her side, Prince? Oh.